Goodness, Guitar Hero can be blamed for getting me into a lot of bands, can't it? Even if I'd heard of said band before, it's most likely Guitar Hero that got me more into that band fully. However, for Ridgewood, New Jersey's own Census Fail, I hadn't even tested anything by them before deciding to buy one of the Guitar Hero 3's bonus songs on a whim. Video games had a very odd impact on my choices in music, and I suppose that it's only fair that a rhythm game had more impact than others, except for wrestling games. Anyway, Census Fail have been around for over a decade and a half now, and have seen all manner of lineup changes, with only lead vocalist James Buddy Nilsson being the one constant. Obviously, we need to talk about the other members too, so let's do that, along with other stuff. It's Backtracking, it's another double episode, and this time it's Census Fail. Let's face the music. We start with their debut, Let It Unfold You. Released in 2004 through Vagrant Records and Drive-Thru Records and produced by the prolific Steve Evans, it's a pretty good start for the band. Actually, this album holds the distinction of having the most songs that I heard from any Census Fail album before actually listening to it in full, and considering that there's a total of 13 tracks, that's a pretty impressive accolade, especially since my first Census Fail song wasn't even from this album, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So, considering that this album was released in the mid-noughties, when just about every other emo band still worth their salt today, most of which are broken up and one of which became a really good Ice Nine Kills, it's an album that had to do a lot to stand out from the pack, and it did. The structuring and production have an oddly raw feel to them, but one has to remember that all of the best emo albums have more emphasis on emotion rather than making things pretty on the production side of things. Add in the fact that the band was working with Steve Flippin' Evans, then yeah, you can count on that guy to bring out the right kind of sound from you, which is impressive for a debut emo album of all things. A lot of their local themes are to do with your typical emo things, such as depression, suicide with lost relationships, and heartbreak, and also a plane flying overhead. I apologise for that. But Census Fail are not really noted for their subtlety in those regards, unlike other bands I've covered before. Long story short, if Buddy Nilsson has been hurt, he's not going to sugarcoat it. He'll tell you straight to your face that you just pissed him off. In fact, that attitude did make the band kind of, well, let's do it the Buddy way and not sugarcoat it. Census Fail used to be assholes. They've gotten much better since then, sure, but the band themselves will admit that they never used to be the nicest bunch of people. In a way that does kind of lend itself to the band's sound in a good way. There's really no need to be subtle when you're talking about subjects that every other emo band and their daddy issues have talked about, so why not stand out by driving the point home as hard as you can? Buddy brings that along well with his awesome lyrics, and even though he doesn't have the best range as a vocalist, it's still decent and his passion shows brightly. Garrett Zablocki and Dave Miller both put in good chugging riffs and breakdowns, with some good solos too. Mike Leiter's bass work sounds pretty good, driving things deep, and his backing screams sound really, really awesome too. And Dan Trapp may just be one of the best drummers in emo history, and probably in music history in my opinion, with awesome timing, great double bass work, and really good combos too. And this is just on the debut, you have to remember. Standout songs include Lady in the Blue Dress, Rum is for Drinking, Not for Burning, Buried Alive, The Irony of Dying on Your Birthday, and my favourite in Slow Dance. Even though the band couldn't avoid every trope of mid-2000s emo, they gave it a damn good shot to avoid most of them, with their passion, aggression, and surprising intelligence showing quite early on, and I can recommend the album ultimately, it's pretty good. We then reached their second album, Still Searching, released in 2006 through Vagrant and Drive-Thru again, and this time produced by Brian McTiernan. this album would contain my first Census Fail song, It Can't Be Saved. Actually, said song is part of a concept album, and for those of you who regularly watch my content, which should be all of you, and you will obey me. Ugh, sorry. Anyway, yeah, for those who watch my stuff, you know that I want to cover this album for What a Concept series that I do, because this is a concept album. In fact, it's a pretty true-to-life concept album, as most of the stories draw from Buddy Nilsson's personal experience with depression, heartbreak, alcoholism, and family issues, all of which are prevailing lyrical themes throughout the album as well. And I know, before anyone points it out, I know that pretty much every band has songs that draw from personal experiences, but poor Buddy seems to have it worse than most, and he makes no secret of it. At least he sticks to his guns when it comes to not sugarcoating things, and you know what? I'll do the same thing. Goodness me, this album fucking rocks. Even before listening to it in full for the purposes of this episode with just a few songs that I had heard going in, I could tell that a good story was laid out here, with Buddy using the guise of a character to project his own painful life experiences to the listener. And the album is really well structured to coincide with the story. A lot of the songs are like miniature chapters, and the band used the right style of sound to tell about the right experience and deliver the right kind of message, whether that be denouncing faith, being swindled by your own psychologist, or cutting ties with your own family, all of which actually happened to Buddy, and I'm not making any of that up. The lyrics are so carefully constructed to bring the story along well. Sure, they're just as in your face as on Let It Unfold You, but to a more measured extent, if that makes sense, is Fail. In fact, it really speaks for the band that during 2006 of all years, they were able to release a truly unique emo/post-hardcore/pop-punk album. To put it into context, the sucker came out 2 weeks before The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance did, which is also an emo concept album. That's curious. Anyway, Buddy's vocals have improved, with his scream sounding better and his storytelling on point. The double guitar work of Garrett Zablocki and new guitarist Heath Serracino is great, with some surprisingly good solos and awesome riffs and breakdowns. Mike's bass work is once again just nice and groovy and deep and has a good drive to the structure of the songs, and dance drumming is fantastic too, adding more speed and awesome work rate to keep up with the others. Standout songs include the title track, Can't Be Saved, Shark Attack, All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues, and my favourite in the closer, that is The Priest and the Matador. Still Searching is a brilliant concept album combining spellbinding storytelling and brilliant lyrics with amazing structuring, solid production, and plenty of passion and emotion on display, and I can totally recommend this one. It's really good. It's really good. We then reached their third album, Life Is Not a Waiting Room. Released in 2008, this one only came out through Vagrant, but Brian McTiernan does stay on as producer. This is also the band's longest album at 48 minutes and 18 seconds, but there is a bit of confusion with that, which I'll get to right about now. Brace yourselves, it's going to be a big rant. So the album is listed as having 13 tracks, but the track listing is confusing as hell. Tracks 1 to 12 are listed all in a row, but then we get to the 13th track on the normal version of the album, which is called Untitled, and is numbered as track 14, but the track preceding that, which is titled Blackout, is technically the album's closing song, and track 13 is exclusive on the iTunes and UK editions as coming up short, with the 15th track titled DB Cooper also being a part of that. But it doesn't stop there, as in the bonus edition, Blackout is replaced with the title track on the album. Oh god, my head just hurts thinking about it, so I won't get too much into it. Anyway, that confusion aside, I do actually quite like this album, which is a bit surprising, since I was kind of expecting to hate it. Chalk that up to going and having only listened to a couple of the songs as opposed to listening to more songs for the previous two albums. Basically, it's my own fault. One could argue that this is where the band started to repeat the pattern of their previous two albums, but the balance in terms of tracks is a bit different for this one. It almost feels like there's a softer song than a heavier one, then that pattern persists almost constantly, with a few songs that mix in both of those tones surprisingly well. There are more guitar solos, probably more on this album than any other Senses Fail album, and they fit in really well when they need to. The structuring is done just right for the right kind of tone that the band wants to set, and the balance is handled so well as a byproduct of that. This album is also where the band started to sound a bit more positive. Sure, there are still references in the lyrics to Buddy's past, with the focus still on his family issues, cowardice, and relationship troubles, but one could argue that this is the album where the band started talking less about themselves and started supporting others going through similar things more. But maybe that's just my interpretation of it. Buddy definitely started to take himself out of the equation a bit more, which was smart, and his vocals definitely convey his lyrics well, with that more positive lilt having a more positive impact. Heath and Garrett's guitar work is great, with Garrett having some fantastic solos. Jason Black does good work on the bass for his first album, with the band sounding good and deep, and dance drumming keeps up well with the tonal shifts, going hard when he's doing stuff when he needs to. Standout songs include Walls at the Door, Lungs Like Gallows, Chandelier, not that one, the maybe closing song in Blackout, that's just confusing, and my favourite in Family Tradition. Confusing track listing aside, Life Is Not a Waiting Room fills out its song really well as the band's longest album, with great passion, awesome solos, and really good production to give major boost to the sounds. I can still recommend the album, it's really good. And finally, for part 1 at least, we reach the band's fourth album, titled The Fire. Released in 2010 through Vagrant again and produced by Brian McTiernan again. I can't wait to say Brendan, but that's someone else. This album would actually become my first Senses Fail album that I listened to from front to back. But before I comment more on this album, I did forget to mention something. See, whilst the band's sole member has always been Buddy Nielsen, the band themselves have never kept the same lineup through any two albums. There's always been at least one change, and that's sort of similar with this one. It keeps the same lineup from Life Is Not a Waiting Room, with the exception of Heath Serracino, his place being taken by Zach Roach on this album, even though his appearance is strange, since he has a credit for working on this album despite not being a member at the time. And this would be the band's last album with the lead guitarist Garrett Zablocki, who was nice enough to record his guitar part for all the tracks, despite being on the outs with the band anyway. Speaking of the tracks themselves, we do once again have some confusion, but it's not nearly as bad as it was last time. So, The Fire is a total of 12 tracks, with all of those being listed correctly, but some versions of the album don't contain the final track, which is titled Ghost Town. But when I first listened to the album when it was released back in 2010, I heard all 12 songs all the way through. Hell, there's not even any iTunes stuff. Sure, there's a live DVD combined with the album itself, but that's no excuse because none of the songs performed on the DVD are from The Fire. Like, none of them at all, they're all from previous albums. Anyway, the album itself is pretty good, and it does hold a place in my eyes my first ever Senses Fail album through and through, and yes, if your stomach just tightened, that means that it clenched in preparation for the incoming punch to the gut. See, I like this album, but it's kind of safe. There aren't as many heavy songs, which could be due to having more positive lyrics than last time, but it almost sounds too positive, if that's a phrase that makes any sense and can make things sound bad, which it shouldn't. But yeah. Also, goodness me, there's a lot of dual tracking going on with the clean vocals. It just kind of adds an air of laziness, which is a shame, as the instrumental work is actually quite good, and whilst the lyrics are more positive, they're still stellar because Buddy Nielsen is just that good of a songwriter. But there are, I said songwriter instead of songwriter, that's what I meant to say. But there are some moments that feel a bit off, and you get the feeling that the band wanted to do more. That's not down to the members either. Buddy screaming and singing both sound great and balanced with good storytelling. The guitar work is stellar with fewer guitar solos but still good riffs. The bass work is good with Jason sounding more comfortable in his new role, and Dan's drumming crashes and plays along well with everything else nicely. Ugh. Standard songs include New Year's Eve, St. Anthony, The Closer and Ghost Town, Landslide, and my favourite, Lifeboats. The Fire is accessible enough for first-time Census File listeners, and I can recommend the album, it's still good. But it does have this feeling that more could have been done, and it feels a little bit rushed in places. It's still good stuff, and it's worth a run-through or several. I do still recommend it. And that'll about do it for part one, but before I completely sign off, I do want to say that I'm going to be taking, I'm not going to be taking a huge break. I'm not going to be posting part two tomorrow. I'm going to try and post it on Friday. Couple of reasons. One, when it comes to two parts now, I want to space myself out more a bit, so you're not just getting all the content in a row. I feel like I should space it a little bit more to make it easier on you, and also it will give me more time to sort of prepare in advance for future episodes. And also, we're changing to a new internet provider tomorrow, so I don't really know how that's going to mess with how I record videos. It might not. I might be worried of nothing, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So you are going to get part two on Friday, not tomorrow. So yeah, and that'll about do it for this one. Thank you for listening. You're awesome. Bye bye.